There we go. Hello, everyone. We are live. Welcome. So excited today to have a conversation about some game-changing hypnotherapy tools with my mentor, who's here with me, Mary Lee LaBay, and I am Jodie Solberg. I have been a clinical hypnotherapist since 2001, and I've worked therapeutically as well as a coach for specifically women in business for that amount of time. But I specialize in things like the effects of trauma and anxiety, addictions, and also pre and perinatal health. And it's been such an amazing journey over these last 24 years of being a hypnotherapist. And in 2018, going into 2019, is when I decided to start my private practice with Psyched Up Success. And I found Mary Lee because I wanted to do some really in-depth continuing education. I wanted to learn how to work virtually. I wanted to be more client-centered. And I wanted to just put some more tools in the toolbox. And I knew some people who had trained with Mary Lee through Bastyr University and Bellevue College. And so we got connected and we have been ever since. So Mary Lee, thank you so much for being here with me today. I know as I've grown in my practice and in my business, you've been such an amazing mentor for me as a hypnotherapist, but also as a trainer. And so would love to talk about some of these tools that really are game changers in our practices and our businesses, and how they might be able to help other people who are wanting to expand their toolbox as well. So I would love for you to introduce yourself.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me here today with you. I'm Mary Lee LaBay, and I've been a clinical hypnotherapist since 1997. And then I moved here to Seattle. And then after that, became a certified instructor around 1997 or 1999. And like you said, I was giving trainings at Bellevue College and Bastyr University, as well as classes that I promoted myself, and now online. And so I continue to teach, and teaching past life regression and hypnotherapy. I've authored 6 books. 2 of them are on past life regression. This one is for training, for giving instruction and training practitioners, and then this one is more the general population. A lot of information about past lives and spiritual things. And then my latest book is Mastering Hypnotherapy, and this one is used in classes across the country and in some other foreign English-speaking countries as a textbook for their hypnotherapy courses. And so I just love the business and love teaching, and love hanging out with you, Jodie.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, we have definitely deepened our connection over these years, and I'm always in class. I'm always happy to help, and I love how we get to work together so much now. We just spoke last weekend at the Pacific Northwest Hypnosis Conference together, so that was always a wonderful experience to have. And, one of the things that we talk about a lot is inner conflict. And we talk a lot about when there's one side of us who really wants to achieve our goals and get to that next level or whatever it might be. But then there's another part of us that seems to be sabotaging that or resistant to that. And I think that's where I want to start off today, because no matter who you are, if you're a coach, if you're a healer, if you're a hypnotherapist already, all of those types of helping professions, you're going to run across people who have that kind of inner conflict. There's always going to be, what you're doing with the coaching and the goals that they set for themselves. And that's what I found with my coaching, especially early on when I separated the two. I had my therapy life and my coaching life, is that often people would get really upset and frustrated with themselves because they couldn't quite get themselves to do the things they knew they needed to do through the coaching. And so I'm going to talk about a couple of techniques today that I know you teach in your programs, and talk about what secondary gains in parts therapy really is, because we talk about that conflict a lot, but most people get stuck in this spiral of just staying in the same cycles and patterns over and over and over again. So would you speak to that a little bit about what is a secondary gain? Because most people do think, well, it's just all negative because I can't get what I want done. and
Right.
then how we resolve those two sides and get them on the same page.
Well, I think that it's interesting. If you're a coach or a therapist, every client, pretty much every client who walks through the door is in an inner conflict, because that's why they're seeking your help. Because if they could just do what they need to do, they would, right? And so there's always that little saboteur, whether it's I just can't get myself to take that step, or I'd rather be doing something else, or what if people don't like me if I do that? All sorts of things that, is running around in their heads that keep them from, taking the steps in their life, what they want to do in order to achieve their goals and dreams. So secondary gains in parts therapy are what I call the go-to tools, because already, if you did nothing else in your session, you could use those tools in order to help your client, because obviously there's some resistance or sabotage going on, or just inner conflict, like you say. So the secondary gain, what we're talking about there is that there is a payoff. So there's something I want to do, and yet here's how I'm acting. And so there's a payoff for that. So let's say I'm smoking, but I want to quit smoking. So there's the inner conflict right there, right? So that's obvious. But if they want to quit smoking, why can't they? What is holding them back, sort of at a deeper level? And that would be the secondary gain or the payoff for smoking. So with that technique, what we're doing is we're trying to find out what are the motivators for doing this behavior that you don't want to have, or making the choice that you don't want to have, whether it's reacting with anger, or being impatient with your children, or smoking or drinking, or eating at midnight, any of those behaviors that you don't want, but you're sabotaging and you're doing it anyway, or vice versa. You want to do something and you're sabotaging and you're holding back. From there, once we determine the secondary gains, what are the benefits and the detriments of that behavior, then we can move over to parts therapy. And with that, we separate out the saboteur from the one that has the positive desire. And then we create a dialogue there and really sort it out. And then we're able to, I would say, close to 100% of the time, get the negative side, the saboteur, to get on board with the positive, the one that has the positive goals, and either meet them halfway or actually just get on board. And then the client can be 100% moving in the direction of their desired goals.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if they're working at cross purposes with themselves, they're
Right.
just in their wheels, they're never really going to get anywhere. And often, usually with those secondary gains, they don't realize what that positive purpose is, or the positive effect of having that habit, or keeping themselves. Sometimes it's comfortable, sometimes it's safe, sometimes it's getting a break, whatever that might be. it started for a reason, but that reason may not be serving and supporting them anymore. And that's why they're there. Like you said, every single person who comes in to see us, they want to make a change, and they know what they don't want to do, but they often don't know how to make that change or what they want to do instead. And so by utilizing the secondary gains and then the parts therapy, we can help them figure out what is a better alternative. What is something that they can do instead where they can still get perhaps that gain, and they may be able to fulfill it in a way that's healthier, that's still supportive of their goals, and they can figure out, you said, how to end that inner conflict, integrate those two parts so they can move forward, and they're not just getting stuck in that cycle over and over and over again, because every time they try to do something new or get to that next level or quit that habit, whatever it is, then something might trigger them and they go right back to it. So
Right.
by helping get all of them on the same page creates more of that real and lasting change versus just putting a Band-Aid on it and then realizing that it's not going to last.
Right, right, exactly. And getting people out of a rut or feeling stuck, getting them to take those steps. And by doing it through these techniques, it's different than just coaching or coaxing a person, suggesting, oh, well, you need to pick up the phone and make cold calls. Like, I don't want to make cold calls, right? And through the techniques, instead of just assigning them what they need to do next or getting them to cognitively agree, yes, I need to quit doing this, or I want to go after this dream. By doing it through hypnotherapy, and we're connecting with the subconscious mind, and they're seeing things from a different perspective, and we're going through these techniques, but they're also observing and experiencing it in a different way, then they can be completely on board and make that transition, that shift into being aligned instead of in conflict, being aligned. And then it's just easy to make that shift, to make that change, instead of having to fight, you know, having to try to withhold from smoking a cigarette or drinking a beer or whatever it is. It's just like, I don't even want it. It's like it becomes a non-issue.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because most people, like you said, are just trying to figure it out at a conscious level, whereas
Mhm.
that inner saboteur is on the subconscious level. So they'll try to just set the goal, push through, make it work. They try to use logic in it, to get themselves out of that rut. But I think of it always as weeds. Like the weeds keep popping up and they keep just mowing them over. They pop up
Right,
again and they mow them over. And they keep
right.
doing that over and over again. Whereas we really need to get to that root, pull that out, heal that, replace it with something that's going to serve and support them better. So then they don't have to keep dealing with that same weed, because it will pop up in different ways throughout their lives.
Exactly, exactly. That's a good analogy. Um, Yeah, and it just becomes seamless. In fact, sometimes people are surprised. They'll say, I got up and I spent the whole day and I forgot to have a cigarette. And it's like, what happened? Oh, well, that's the way we want it to happen, is just becomes the new habit, is the positive life affirming behaviors.
Yeah,
So,
because it's not just about what they're giving up or what they're losing. It's important
right.
that it's about what they're gaining and what they're moving towards as well.
Right. And, willpower, that's something that I hate to have to use willpower for myself, right? Because that just takes so much more energy, and it's like, oh no, I'm going to resist that cookie or whatever. And so by doing the hypnotherapy, we can soften the need for willpower. There may still be some willpower
Mhm.
involved, but for the most part, we've switched the desire, so that you look at the cookie and you just think, I don't really even want that. I don't think I would feel that good if I ate that. And so then it just isn't willpower anymore. It's just picking a different value, picking something that's more important for you than whatever it was sabotaging.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and a lot of the work that I do is somatic work as well. And one of the things that I want to talk about today too is object imagery, because we tend to hold emotions and energy and things in our bodies as well. So we have that inner conflict going on with our conscious and our subconscious mind. And then often, we're looking then at where have they been storing that? If they haven't wanted to deal with something, they weren't able to deal with something, or they didn't have those coping strategies to just feel and then release the emotions. We're really designed to feel things kind of like a wave. You feel it and you move on, and we process and release. But as humans, we like to overthink, and we tend to hold on to those things, especially the negative ones. And so a lot of times when people talk about object imagery, it's more in a literal sense, which is physical pain. But as we know, our mind and our body are completely connected. And even the CDC says that at least 85% of physical health conditions have a psychological component. So, it's
Right.
much more than that, I'm sure. So we're really looking at, it's not just the physical pain, but also the emotional pain, because we were just talking about habits and sometimes addictions. And often, those are coming from a place of that secondary gain. It was that coping strategy for them to feel more comfortable, to feel more safe, to feel more secure, whatever it was. And often those types of things are also being trapped, in our subconscious, but also in our bodies. And so I love that in your course, like you said, we do secondary gains in parts therapy. You do that with just about everybody. But object imagery is another one that I find very valuable with that physical pain, emotional pain, whatever it is. Everyone seems to know where they hold stress. People say things like the weight of the world on my shoulders, or I feel like there's, this weight on my chest, or this knot in my stomach, or maybe they are somebody who know that they lock their jaw or get headaches. And so I feel like people, it makes sense to them. They understand that of, oh, this is what happens when I feel stressed. But we're so conditioned to be disconnected in our society that we still, for some weird reason, think our mind's over here and our body's over here. And that's not the case. And so I love if you would share a little bit about your take, because it is unique. And I love the way you teach object imagery, because it's been so valuable to me in my practice with all of my clients, whether they are dealing with addictions or physical pain or emotional pain, or just, not dealing with their feelings.
Right. So all of those, you're absolutely right. And so we use object imagery when there is some kind of sensation or emotion, right? So physical pain or emotional sensation. And sometimes they're positive, but normally when clients are coming in to have help, it's because there's something negative going on. And I find it interesting and useful that when a client starts to talk about what they want to work on, they might actually use those visual or sensory descriptors, like the weight on my chest, or I feel like I'm wearing a fat suit, or I've got a ball and chain attached to my ankle, or something like that. And so in their language, they're already describing what is going on. And so it's very easy to just say, okay, could you close your eyes and now describe, what is the color, the shape, how does it function, how does it feel, right? And getting them to really build out that vision. And sometimes if we're kind of coming in a different angle and they haven't gotten the vision, I might ask them actually, can you, if I gave you a full life poster of you, a full size poster of you, and some paints and crayons and pencils, I would like for you to imagine drawing on you exactly how that feels. Maybe they say, well, maybe they're talking about grieving. My mother died and I'm grieving and I can't get over this sadness. Where do you feel it on your body? I feel it in my chest. If you had a full size poster of yourself, how would you describe that? And then, maybe they take this red, or black, black ball in the middle of their chest or whatever. And so they can imagine drawing it. And then, I say, well, describe to me what you've drawn. So either they've already come in with that picture and they're already expressing that, or if they haven't got the picture, you can have them draw it mentally in their mind, what that would look like. And the reason that we use the object, that we quantify or objectify the emotion or the feeling, the sensation, is so that we can manipulate it, right? So if somebody says, well, I have a pain in my leg, and you go, okay, well, can you make the pain go away? It's pretty vague. But if they say, well, I have a pain in my leg and it's sharp and it feels like there's a knife sticking into my leg, and it's really sharp and painful. And then, so they've got that vision, and you could say, well, first of all, where did it come from? How did it get there? So you might start exploring the roots of that. And could you remove it? And so maybe they remove the knife, and then we can soothe it over. Um, and sometimes they're able to very quickly find out how much they're in control of these sensations, right? Now, we want to be really careful that we're not masking something that is really indicating a serious health condition, right? Like if they're coming in for migraines, we want them to go have a doctor check them out if they're having continual migraines, because we don't want to make the pain go away and then have them not get checked out to discover that there's something going on in their brain, right? So we want to be sure that they're getting checked out medically. But in the meantime, there's so many things that we can help to alleviate. For instance, I had a client who was grieving, and she had been carrying this heavy weight around, you know, because her mother had died. So she was carrying this heavy weight around with her for months, maybe even a year or two. And so she came in and she said it was like a big, heavy black rock in her chest. And so we started to explore it. Why did it come? Well, it's because I miss my mother and I'm so sad about her passing. And so in her case, we were able to have some conversation around that. Oh, how does carrying this rock signify that you love your mother, right? And by her exploring that, she was like, well, I'm not really sure. Um, it's just making me really sad. But if I'm not sad and if I'm not carrying this burden, I would feel like that maybe my mother wouldn't know how much I loved her. And so in that conversation, I asked her, I said, if you died and your own daughter was carrying that rock around, how would you feel? And she said, oh, I wouldn't like that at all. I want her to be happy and to live her life fully, right? I had a full life. I want her to live a full life. And so she, first of all, was able to get a different perspective about this. And then I said, how could we change this heavy black rock into something that would actually be a representative of that love, to glorify it, to, you know, celebrate the love that you had and the experiences that you had with your mother. And so for her, she said, well, I'm going to change it into like a megalith, which would be what reminds me of, was it 2001, where they had that tall, in this case, it was like a tall black spire kind of thing. And she said, I'm going to put it in my heart to signify, you know, this honoring of my mother, and I'm going to surround it with flowers, you know, something really beautiful and fragrant, and that demonstrates that love that I have for my mother. And so she changed it in her mind. She created this whole new scene and new way of envisioning it. And she said, oh my gosh, that feels so light, and it feels like a true representation of the relationship that we had. And it just feels so good. And she was able to just release all the grief, and instead of grieving, turn it to a celebration of her relationship with her mother. And it was just so easy after, you know, walking around with this heavy heart for so long, to now just feel so released from that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And right there was an example of a secondary gain. She did not actually realize that that was representing how she was trying, her subconscious was trying to hold on to her mother and her mother's memory. And so finding a way that she could do that that could really honor her without causing her pain and discomfort as well. And great point about getting medically cleared for all of those things. I had a migraine client, and I'm always very supportive of my clients having a care team, making sure they're getting checked out for everything. But often I'll have people who will come and say, I've been checked out for absolutely everything. They can't figure out what it is and exactly why. And I had a client who had been experiencing chronic migraines since childhood. And what we figured out, because she'd gone to every doctor and tried everything and all the medications, and the doctor said, we can't figure out why you are having these migraines. And it was because of all the pressure and expectation to achieve that had been put on her as a child, that she was now putting on herself to, you know, be the perfect business owner and wife and mom and all these things. And those migraines, one of her secondary gains for that is the only time she got to take a break.
Exactly. Yes. Sometimes these symptoms are, well, they're coping mechanisms, right? Our subconscious mind really wants to support us, right? It wants us to be right, so it will point out things in our environment and in our experiences that substantiates our worldview. So there's that, but it also wants us to learn and grow and evolve our soul and support us in many ways. And so the subconscious mind in her case was likely trying to get her to have better boundaries, to, you know, set up her life a little differently and be able to do self-care for herself. And and if she isn't doing that, the subconscious mind is creating more and more stress in the energetic field. And then that stress starts getting louder and more physically dense. And then it's hitting the body and creating these symptoms. And I've seen it with a lot of different syndromes where, because they didn't pay attention to the stress when it was out in the energetic field, they allowed it to come and create symptoms in the physical. But the subconscious mind is not trying to sabotage us. It's not trying to make it painful, but it's the only way that it can get our attention.
Exactly. Your body's speaking to you.
Yes.
Absolutely. Subconscious is speaking through your body.
Well, the body is a perfect communication device for our subconscious. So it's
Mm-hmm.
going to tell you things, and it's going to show up in your body, whether it's acne or your hair is falling out, or you've got some conditions and diseases starting to formulate. That those are signals and communications from your subconscious.
Yeah,
The
it's
earlier that we take care of it, the better.
mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the first things we work on with clients is getting more connected.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah, that awareness is really that first step. And if things are happening below the surface at the subconscious level, and again, we're just trying to work on them consciously, we're not able to really see what's going on. And so people explain it away, blow off what that symptom is. They'll just say, oh, that just, all the kids are sick this time of year. So we always get sick this time of year. Well,
Right.
what else is happening this time of year? Are you usually more stressed? Are you, more busy? Are you, pushing yourself and burning yourself out? Or they'll say, oh, well, it's just this. I just need to catch up on some sleep, but it's happening chronically. And like you said, it can create or exacerbate symptoms in the
Mhm.
body. So definitely need to listen and tune in to what it's telling us.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the object imagery is the perfect tool to use for that, um, to alleviate those little things. But hypnotherapy in general is perfect for identifying those stressors and identifying those messages, because we're connecting the client with their subconscious mind. And so the subconscious has that opportunity to communicate. And then once the person is aware, we can, they can start looking for ways to alleviate that. So, like I said, having better boundaries, or uh, whatever it is that is going to be required for them to take care of themselves so that the pain can go away.
Exactly. Like you said, living in an alignment so that we aren't ignoring things until they get worse and worse and worse until it shuts us down completely. And a lot of people come to us when that's the case, but often there's been a history before that happens and they didn't know how to tune in. So hypnotherapy is so amazing for that. And these are only a few of the techniques. I know you teach dozens of techniques in your integrative hypnotherapy and past life regression course. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more, and I'll share a little bit more too about the different techniques that you teach and why it's so comprehensive. Because that's one of the things that I found is, like I said, been trained clinically when I was in grad school way back when for clinical psychology. And it was something that, I looked around. I looked at different types of trainings, and so much of it was surface level or just a few things or very scripted. Oh, I was looking for something deeper that would really cover all the bases. I wanted to be able to treat people like we've been talking about as whole people. And I wanted to be able to have a complete toolbox where when I went into a session with a client, often we think, or they think, that we're dealing with one thing, but then it's something else because the subconscious knows what is important to work on. And so, you think that it's just about smoking, but then it's something so much deeper. And so I would love to hear more and for you to share with everyone about the thought process that went into putting this course together in the way that you have it, because like I said, it is the most thorough and comprehensive one that I've seen.
I agree with you. It really covers everything. So I started with my hypnotherapy practice in 1997. Prior to that, for about 10 years, I had been doing past life regression. So I had already been working with clients and exploring past lives. And then I married the two with, the hypnotherapy and the past life regression in a very unique style, because the hypnotherapy is just a huge body of work that we can address so many issues, and then adding the past life in really helps us to go back to root causes that may have occurred from other lifetimes. And also, clients may spontaneously go into past lives. So I married these two. And I also realized that, in the beginning, I was just doing sightseeing tours of past lives where, who was I? What did I do? Who did I marry? Whatever those details are. But once I had acquired the clinical hypnotherapy, I realized that we could do a lot of healing in the past lives to soften traumas that have happened there, to integrate and integrate those traumas, because in many lifetimes we didn't have the access to therapists, right?
Mhm.
So integrating those so that they're not negatively affecting us here, but also with just working with clinical to be able to manage some of the root causes that we're seeing in the present lifetime, to understand whether it's relationships or physical ailments or addictions or anything like that. It's very useful to be able to go into the past lives. So I married them in a very unique offering that isn't available anywhere else. And then over the past 30 years of being in practice, I've taken all sorts of seminars and training and read books and accumulated other techniques, and I've created some techniques that are very unique to my work. And so what I'm offering in the course now is all the techniques that I've accumulated that I use in my sessions with my clients. And so when people get trained in hypnotherapy and they have one or two tools and they can put a person into trance and bring them out and do regression or something,
Mhm.
and that's this life regression, not past life. They have this small, scope of practice with hypnotherapy. Um, so now with all these other techniques, you can work on people that are coming with any issue, from the spiritual to the mental to emotional and physical. You'll have this variety of techniques that you can apply, and we do it very organically. So like you said, no scripts.
Mhm.
And but anyway, so it's very organic, client centered, and you'll be weaving these techniques in even one given session. You'll weave maybe 8 or 10 different techniques into it in order to achieve the goal that your client wants. And by taking this course, you get it all in one package, and you don't have to go out then and get all the trainings and collect all the tools like I did. So the tools come from NLP, hypnosis, psychology, and even shamanic style processes and techniques.
Yeah, and that is very unique to be able to bring all of those different tools and pieces together, like you said, to meet people where they're at and to be able to pull in whatever they need. And sometimes when people are trained on, just like you said, a couple techniques, some scripts, things like that, then they do feel stuck. They feel like they have hit a point where they can only go so far. They only really know how to work on, smoking or weight loss or, whatever it is. They're like, well, I have scripts for these things, but people keep coming in with these other things or these roots to these habits. And I'm not sure what to do with them. So I do see a lot of people have that challenge. And then also, again, coaches and other types of healers who will say, well, people keep coming in with these deeper issues, and I don't know how to deal with that. And so having those tools right then and there to be able to say, well, let's work through some of that and to be able to support them, whether you want to start a whole new business or you just want to expand what your business is. I know there are so many different kinds of people who take your courses. So it might be, people who are already hypnotherapists, any kinds of coaches, health coaches, or life coaches, or business coaches, to different types of healers, massage therapists, lots of different people with different backgrounds who are just saying, hey, I want to do this, for myself, for my clients, and to be able to help people on that much deeper level get below the surface.
Right. Even at Bastyr, I was teaching naturopaths, acupuncturists, nutritionists, and they were saying that I can only go so far, and then we get stuck. And so I need these tools to be able to take my patients or my clients even further. Maybe they're working in nutrition and they're working on weight loss, and they could only go so far with the nutrition, but now they have to get underneath there and maybe see the past lives. Why are they holding on to this weight, or dealing with the psychological, emotional fears around losing weight, or whatever that is, or coaches where their clients are getting stuck and can't seem to get past certain places. Massage therapists, the same thing. We've been working on these knots in your body, but now we have to go deeper and figure out why you keep creating them, right? So, yeah, I've trained people from all walks of life, and I've even had psychologists who said, I'm not even going to use psychology anymore. I'm going to be completely doing hypnotherapy because it's so profound and effective. So, but the point here, though, is that I'm giving you everything that I've accumulated. And so in my own practice, which is very busy, whatever that client is, coming in to work on, I have a tool to help them. I have, a number of ways that I can get in there and help them. And I hand it all to you in this course.
Absolutely. And the course is online. You also offer live calls. So what I love about the course is, yes, everything's online, and there's videos, there are demos, there are audio files in there, and then there are 10 weeks of live support calls. And we just started those. So we're right at the very beginning of that. But I wanted to talk about this today because it's also been such an incredible value with this course. I know since COVID, we've really kept the price very, very consistent and very accessible for people. And there's a price increase coming up soon. So would you like to share a little bit about the nuts and bolts of the course and what that's going to look like? Because I wanted to make sure to share that with everyone before we have that bump in rate. The price is getting raised, and that happens because there's so much value in it. You have the new book, you have all of this new material that you're always giving us. And so it's still going to be an amazing value, but I definitely wanted to share with everyone while they still can get in at the current price.
Right. So the current price has been in force since the beginning of COVID, even before that. So it's been 5 or 6 years at the current price. And then, so I decided that it's time and the value of the course is far higher than even what we're going to be charging. But the price is going up actually starting July 1st. Right now it's $3,500. On July 1st, it's going up to $6,200. I am going to offer a discount, a savings in July. I think July and August, they're going to be able to have a discount, but it's still not going to be anywhere close to the 35 that they can get into right now. So if you were interested in the course, even if you don't start studying till the end of summer because you're busy, if you get in now, you'll save at least a couple $1,000. And that goes away June 30th. I don't think there's 31 days. I think it's June 30th. So the end of June, the last day of June at midnight on in the Pacific, so Pacific time, midnight, that rate goes away forever. Mm-hmm. And we're going to the higher rate, $6,200. there's going to be a discount, but I can't remember exactly what we've decided on that. But it'll still probably be around $5,000 to come into the course then. And then with it being online, you can access the course anytime you want. You can take all the time you want to complete it. There's no cutoff, and you can keep referring back to the course, come back and review. And then the calls that Jodie mentioned, we have 20 hours of calls. There's a 10-week sequence that occurs 3 times during the year. You come on the calls, I give demonstrations, I teach new things, I answer all your questions, and you have community, you have practice partners, a lot of things that like a live class that is available there. And you can repeat those at no additional cost in the future. So I have students like Jodie, you've been going through it like 4 or 5 times at least, I think, maybe more. I have other students that do the same thing. They go out, or they come through the course, they get certified, they're working, and then they think, you know, I need to learn a little more, or I have questions that I want answered. So they sign back up again and they come to the calls. No more money is expended, you know, so those are free. And then they can come, and what students have said, they share it. Everybody who repeats them say, I learn something new every time I come through the course, because there's different people in the room, different questions being asked, different demonstrations. The way that I word it might be different. And then also because there's so much information in this course, there's so much to learn that it's really not expected that you'll learn all of it perfectly in 10 weeks or whatever. And so you'll get some of it down really well, and then, you know, you'll start adding some of the other techniques as needed. But when you come back, you know, you've been working, you know, using those techniques and doing pretty well. But when you come back and I'm explaining it again and demonstrating it again, it's like you're able to hear it in a different way, because now you've heard it and you've practiced it and you've integrated as much as you can. But when you come back, then, you know, you can kind of integrate it in a deeper way. So they're extremely valuable. So go to the website that Jodie has put up here and check out the training.
Yes, absolutely. I will make sure that this link is everywhere that this video is, so that you can check it out, because it is, like you said, such a huge value. Absolutely. And I just want to say thank you so much, Mary Lee, for sharing your wisdom and continuing to share your wisdom with all of us who have taken your course, because that is a huge benefit, that you get lifetime access to this course and you can come back to those live calls. And so getting in, you know, we just had a couple weeks of calls so far. You aren't missing out. There are replays. You can jump in. Absolutely. It's such a gift. There are payment plans available, so you can check those out on the website as well. And I just want to thank you and thank everyone for watching, because whether they're already certified in hypnotherapy or these would be brand new tools to help their clients experience deeper and more lasting change, it's such a benefit to be able to have all of your knowledge and wisdom of the last 30 years behind us, implementing in our work. And I know it was a huge game changer for me, even after so many years of being a hypnotherapist. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. And, you know, another point to make is that when they add all these tools in, they can raise the rate that they're charging. So you go from being, say, a coach to a coach and a hypnotherapist, or you're combining that, then you can raise your hourly rate or your package rates, because you're offering more benefit to your clients. And so, like you said, if you want to jump in, I think we have 7 calls out of 10 left to do, or maybe 8.
8, because we're doing one tomorrow.
Tomorrow is
Yes,
the
that's
third
number
call,
3.
right? Oh, okay. So we have 8 calls left in this cycle. So if you jump in right away, you'll get access to the call or to the course. You can kind of study, get prepared, just oriented. You don't have to have all the information under your belt just to come to the class. And you can start listening to the classes as you're studying, or listen to the live calls as you're studying. And we do repeat or replays. So even if you come in today or tomorrow, you'll be able to listen to all the replays of the calls from this cycle.
Exactly. Absolutely. And like I said, there's so many videos, great demos, practice time. There's so much involved in this course and so worth it. So thank you again, Mary Lee. If anyone has questions, I know that they can book a call with you. They can message me or you, and please reach out to us. I'm happy to give you my feedback and my, honest opinion on how this could benefit you. I know Mary Lee's happy to answer questions as well. And just wish you all the best in your healing journey and the journeys of your clients, because that's what it's all about. It's helping people to heal and move forward.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Jodie. And I'll see you in class tomorrow morning.
I will see you then. Thanks so much. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.